we're going to be talking about something which is, I guess, really interesting, really complex. I think people find this whole idea of tech and a tech stack and sort of like how things integrate and all that. I think if you're not sort of in it like you and I, like it sounds just like the most complicated thing in the world. And for an operator who's thinking about taking on a product like yours, I guess they're thinking, oh my God, how the hell am I going to get this to kind of like integrate with the things I've already chosen, or have I chosen the wrong things and all that type of stuff. So I'm really looking forward to getting your sort of like perspective on how that works and stuff.
Yes.
I reckon, to be honest, given that, we should probably make sure everybody's on the same page and up to speed with what we're talking about here. Like, I think a few definitions might be quite useful. So like, what the hell is a tech stack?
And this is something like, this is something that's definitely come around since my time of being in this world. So I suppose there's two, as far as hospitality is concerned, the bit that I really concentrate on is what I would call the people, the HR tech stack, which is very different from the business tech stack, although they do sort of obviously come together. So I think a lot of operators, when they think about their tech stack, think about their ecosystem and customer relationship management and all that kind of stuff. And almost, I think, probably up until about 10 years ago, what was happening behind the scenes from an employee perspective was a little bit left behind. And I think it still is, if I'm honest, in a lot of respects. And I think it's with the advent of some really strong workforce management tools coming out, which integrate into the front end, that people are now starting to think, actually, let's look at how we can engage our employees on tech just as much as we might want to engage our customers on our tech. And I mean, that's where we come in. We talk about the employee experience. So from when someone first hears about you in the marketplace right through to when they leave, when I started out, how you would hear about the fact that there was a job or somebody, there was a good company out there or whatever, was because it would be in the adverts in the back of the Caterer or the Publican or whatever publication that you were reading at that time. And so, fast forward 20 odd years and you can underpin every step of the employee experience through technology. It's quite, I suppose I come at it from a consultancy point of view in terms of what is the employee experience you're offering, and then how do you then underpin each part of that. And for me, with completely a consultancy head on and not thinking about technology at all, if you ask me what is the thing that employees want most, they want to just be able to go to one place and get everything that they need and it to be seamless. And they don't care about which provider. You've got somebody working behind a bar or in a head office in a hospitality business. They couldn't care less whether it's us or what learning management system they use or, who's providing their communication. They just want it to work and they want it to be seamless. And I think in hospitality, actually, we have really struggled with that, getting that right. And there were two options, certainly as far as an HR tech stack are. There's one-stop shop, so a system that does everything from your ATS, so applicant tracking system, right through to when you join, to payroll, to performance management, to learning. So there are businesses that either do all that stuff or have acquired enough of those platforms and bolted them together. So you can go for that type of business. Or what I would prefer, obviously, because it's what I do, is to work with lots of what I would call, say, best in class, or people that are just literally staying in their lane, doing one thing, but are really willing to work with lots of other people's to create a bespoke, if you like, tech stack. Because everybody will have some tech in place, most people will, and you'll really like some of it. You might not be keen on other bits of it. But the first thing to do, I would always say, if somebody comes and says, we want to look at Korero, I'm like, okay, I'm delighted you want to look at Korero, and I can sit here and I can talk to you about Korero all day long, and I can do a lovely presentation and I can tell you all the reasons why you should have it. But two things I want to know first is, how does the culture of your business look like? And I think we spoke about that in the last podcast. What's the culture of your business? And do you know what good looks like? But secondly, how are we going to fit in with everything else you have at play? So if it's your business and you've got no tech whatsoever, is our system really, really the first system you should be getting in? Probably not, actually. We appear along a journey that somebody takes, but when we speak to our clients, the first thing I really want to understand is, what have you got right now? Which bits of it do you really like? And are you actually just looking for one system to do everything, or are you willing to work with lots of different people? And by the way, the one systems that do everything, some of their clients still use our stuff anyway, because our stuff is really good in its space. So even though, some of the big boys, as I call them, some of the big boys have got modules where you can, fill in a form to do a review. The analytics aren't as good. It's not as intuitive. There are lots of reasons why you still use our tech. But yeah, from my perspective, I need to understand that landscape and often help people work that out in the first instance, which is really good that Chris Fletcher and Tech on Toast have come into my world, because now at least I can say, well, he does that. So yeah, but no, I still end up doing it because you want to help people. I want to help people.
Mm-hmm. Is that interesting? I've not really thought about it like that before, where I think even brand new operators know they need a tech stack for let's call it customer facing end. Even if they don't call it a tech stack, they'll say, well, I know I need a card machine, I know I need a reservations booking system, I know that they need to talk to each other, otherwise I don't know. And then they might say, well, I know I need to do some accounting, so that needs to talk to Zero or whatever. But then on the sort of like staff management side or the HR side, like you say, I think you're right, it's sort of like probably sort of 10, 15 years behind, isn't it? Because that staff management has always been done on paper or WhatsApp or, whatever it is. It's just face to face.
I still hear about people getting their rotas. I mean, the whole workforce management side of things, I still hear about people that are getting their rotas literally, 2 days before they're due to go on shift. And there's no way in the world that we live in now that should be the case. There's no excuse for it, because you can get the technology out now to do it. And actually, the best thing in the world, from my perspective, is let people choose when they want to work. There are some restrictions around it, but I think there's still a lot of command and control leadership within the industry. They're almost too scared. But you think, look, if you're a really, really good cohesive team, then you can work this stuff out. Put the shifts out there and nominate when you want to work, and you'll get some of them and you won't get some of them, but give people the flexibility and the freedom to be able to do that. So there is the technology out there to make it really easy and engaging for people. It's just that I think it's not necessarily thought about as much as it should be. And, the same with learning. People tend to go towards the compliance. Oh, well, we need to give people a rota, we need to give them pay slips, and we need to do some e-learning, but it doesn't mean they're having a great experience on the tech. And I think it needs as much consideration as the whole employee experience in the first place. What's the promise you're giving to your people that you are going to be a great place to work? And here are all the things that we're going to do across your entire time with us. And here's the technology to support it. I think, as I've said before, there's no point putting in the technology if your leadership is broken or if you've got a toxic culture, because no piece of technology is going to fix that, however much we want to call all our platforms, employee experience, and we will help. Not if the leadership team aren't bought in. So everything, in my world, everything needs to be joined up, or at least there has to be a plan. As I'm sure you know, sometimes it's really hard to get these things across the line. You'll have, we'll work with a client and they might be changing their HR system. They're like, oh, now can you integrate with these people? And it's just like, we've never integrated with them before. It's going to be a load of work on our behalf. How do we make that happen? And as a small business, we are really open to all kinds of integrations. But from a bigger business perspective, we had a client recently, we're working with a third party that wouldn't even email us because they were a day behind paying their bill or something. You're just like, come on. There has to be more about collaborating to give the client what they need. again, hey, maybe I'm naive, but I think business and tech business can be really good and can push forward, but you have to have the willingness from the organisations. And the smaller the organisation is, usually, the more willing people are to do the work. Even though we've probably got the least resource, we're probably much more open to it because we're closer to our product, we're closer to our clients, we've got more to prove. We're tiny businesses, right? So I think we're sort of open to sort of any way of getting our stuff in front of a client is a thing. Whereas when you've got the privilege of having thousands of customers, maybe you're not so bothered about the one customer that wants to integrate to this one piece of software.
Well, it's just harder to turn a ship that big as well, isn't it? There's just so much stuff going on. So for anybody who's listening or watching then, and maybe this could be their first sort of introduction to your business and
Yes.
obviously what you do. Hopefully they know what you do because we've covered that in some previous episodes. You should definitely go back and listen to them first. But how can you sort of explain what it feels like to use Korero and like the different options? Like what does the user experience actually look like?
So if you had the perfect tech stack all joined up, all singing, all dancing, all working, you would have a really, and I'm going to do some name checks now because it's organizations that I really like. So for example, if you had like People Bank or Talent Funnel, who are my two, at the moment, my two favorite ATSs. Let's say you were working with one of those, somebody would, decide that they wanted to work with you and they would apply for a job and they would go through a process using the Talent Funnel or People Bank piece of technology. And, you'd have all your stuff sorted out through there. So you'd have your offer letters and your right to work checks and all the things that need to happen before you start with a business. And then automatically you would be, put into some kind of workforce management type technology where your first rota will be generated, and hopefully you'd get that well in advance, and you might have had some contact with your manager through that system. And there's all kinds of stuff that needs to happen pre-joining. And then on day one, you might come into the business and you'll be introduced to the business. And as you're introduced to the business and you go through your day or first couple of days, at some point, it would be great if somebody said, right, now just go and download this app. And you would go and download an app. And I mean, Facebook Workplace isn't going to exist anymore, but let's say it's Facebook Workplace or it's Yapster, is another great tech tool that's owned by a business called Sona, or WorkVivo, who is owned by Zoom, I think, and has just taken up a lot of the Facebook Workplace work. There's another one called Blink that I really love. So, let's say, you come into having a really great comms app. So you go on, you're told by your manager to go onto your phone and download an app. And on that app, you will see some company communication. So it might be, I can see that this department did really well last week and this is the employee of the month, or they're having a wellbeing day in 2 weeks' time. Yeah, I'd like to sign up for that. So there'd be some basic communications on there. And there'd also be a way that you can direct message. So WhatsApp isn't great being used in a business for all kinds of GDPR and, reasons of not being able to switch it off and stuff. With all these workplace apps that do comms, you can turn it off when you're not working. You have more control over it and the business has more control over it. So for all those reasons, this is the one place that you would communicate with an employee. So as an employee, you can go in and you can, somebody might have welcomed you to the business or your manager, how are you getting on? And at that point, at end of day one, end of the induction, that's where a business might use Korero for the first time. So you've been introduced to your comms app and you've been told, actually, I can go into this comms app and I'll be notified that I need to do some compliance training before I do my first shift, or I need to do an introduction to the company video and I need to watch that before I start. And also, here are all my benefits. There's a place with all these apps where I can go and get my benefits, or I can give ideas to what I think would be improved about the company. But there's a place there with all these apps, different things that I can use. But also we have some notifications. So in my personal chat space, there'd be a notification from Korero that would say, how's your first day gone? Click here and it would take you into our system. It'd be single sign-on, and you'd go straight into our system, so you wouldn't necessarily know. You'd be already set up in Korero, because we would have integrated with whichever system has your data. Go in, and it would just ask you a question, maybe how's your first day been? Is there anything else you would have liked on your first day? Give us a score from 1 to 10, how it could have gone. And nothing necessarily needs to happen with that, unless maybe you're asking them a 1 to 10 question and you score less than a 5, then potentially the manager should be notified. But what it gives you is a bit of a sense check around what's that first day been like? How's it going? And Korero, we can bespoke the questions that we ask to any level, any job grade, different questions for different people, depending on what that looks like. And then again, you work through your first week in the organisation, and again, you'll be, hopefully somebody will give you some communication around some benefits, or maybe that there's a bit of learning that you'd like to go on, all the things that can happen with the good HR tech that's out there. But at the end of week 1, we would recommend that you get another little question from Korero asking how your week went. And we would encourage at that point a person to sit down with their manager and just talk about their first week. Like, if as a manager you can't take the time to sit with somebody after their first week for 20 minutes, just go, how's it gone? Have you got the right uniform? Do you know where all the teaspoons are kept? Whatever it might be, it's really important to be continually checking in with someone, and not just, are you doing the job, but how are you feeling about stuff? Is it, is it a bit stressful? Is it not stressful? Because there's a real temptation, and I had this conversation with someone the other day. Shouldn't I, I know it's not working, but I'll probably just leave it till they're 3 months. Why? Why would you do that? If you're at week 1 or week 4 or week 8, and you know that something isn't right, deal with it. Deal with it now. If this person isn't right for your business, or you aren't right for them, do not wait for 3 months to have that conversation. Do not wait for this weird, arbitrary 3-month probation review, which, by the way, hate that word. We never use it. It's, one of our clients calls it the discovery period. You're discovering about me, I'm discovering about you. Let's find out if we like each other. It's not a world at the moment we can live in where we can just assume that everybody wants and needs a job and they'll be subservient to whatever that looks like. We live in a world where this 3 months, they're checking you out as much as you're checking them out. That's, goes without saying now, really. So as you're working through that first 3 months, there will be regular check-ins from Korero, again, going in through whatever communication app you have. A good comms app, you should be up at 95% uptake on that. And we would expect the same from Korero. Every single person that's going through this process, if the tech is embedded, it's a really good culture, you've got leaders who are engaged with it, people should be doing it, and there's no excuse not to do it. It's part of your people promise. This is the way we do things here. If you're putting our technology in and you think it can stand alone, and you're expecting people to go and log into something from an email that they may or may not get every 6 months, then it's less likely to work unless your culture is really set up to do that. So that does work. We have organisations that use it as a standalone and go through email, but they tend to be outside hospitality, our businesses that aren't in hospitality, where you're sitting at a desk every day and you still do stuff through email. So we love a good comms app, because that has to be the way of getting through, or any kind of front-facing app that somebody's going to have on their phone.
Yeah. So I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, the thesis is we want to ask all these useful questions to employees, and the best way to have a conversation with them is to meet them where they already are.
100%. You've got to go where people are. Our staff, it's not you're not going to lose your job. You're not going to crash your business because you're not having great career conversations with people, or you don't have the technology to do it. And, there's a lot that says you shouldn't provide a service. You'll never be successful providing a service that is a nice to have. So I don't think it is a nice to have. I think it's essential. However, you don't need it to run your business. You can easily run a business and never have a career conversation with anybody. It won't be as successful as if you do, but you can do it. It's not, there's nothing on there that somebody's going to come in and shut you down because you're not doing this. So in that respect, it can be seen as not being very sticky, especially if managers aren't engaged in it. We sometimes get like employees want to do it because who doesn't love sitting down for a period of time and talking about themselves and their careers, but managers finding time to do it, that's often the issue. So yeah, if we can get it in front of people where they are, we've now got this huge opportunity in our world where the business can talk to the employee, and we don't always have to rely on middle management, if you were. And your middle leaders are they're the biggest barrier or the strongest conduit, depending on the culture of your business. So by having something like this in place, you can get assistant managers who are doing it and doing it really well, even if the GM isn't necessarily bought into it. Because pushing through a comms app means that you're getting to people without having to go through layers or, email addresses that have got 20 people attached to them. I remember like housekeeping at XYZ hotel and you go to 20 people and you're like, what? How are we going to this? I mean, back in the day, we were working with a hotel group where we printed out, I'm talking 2005, where we printed out a letter for every single employee and then we
Wow.
delivered them into their pigeonholes to tell them their email address and their password so they could then go to a computer to log on to do this stuff.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I mean, to be honest, like I don't check my personal email very often at all. Once a week is probably at most, I would say.
Okay.
And a lot of employees will be registered onto the communication app through their personal email. That's what happens with us a lot of times. So, yeah. So the one thing I think that's pretty simple and straightforward way for people to understand how you fit in, and I think that makes complete sense. I wanted to get you sort of like take on the balance between using tech to communicate and have these conversations versus sitting down and actually having the face-to-face conversation, because I know you've got quite a unique approach to that, because tech obviously is a great way to solve some things, isn't it? But I don't think it solves everything for you, if I'm right.
No, absolutely not. The technology, I'd say, is an enabler of having a conversation. I suppose it's quite unusual. We don't want our technology to take away from sitting down and having a face-to-face conversation. What we want our technology to do is allow people to plan for the conversation and to be able to do something with the results of the conversation, which does mean that somebody has to input it somewhere. And if you can get over that, this is all about having a good career conversation. It's all about somebody sitting down and saying, actually, we want to talk to you about your happiness, your well-being, whether you've got stuff to do the right job, what's next for you, what development do you need, how are you as a person, how can we help you get to where you want to go? And if where you want to go is just be here forever, how does that look for you? What's that like? Now, having those conversations without having some of the prompts to do that is quite a difficult thing to do. Your head's in a million different things. You're a busy manager, you're operational. At some point, you've got to sit down, take a step back and focus on the person in front of you. And from an employee perspective, how often do you get up in the morning and think, happy am I today? Or would I recommend my employer as a friend? You need those prompts. So what we're doing is prompting you to have the right conversations with the right people at the right time. So that's what we're doing. And, there's no way that we want people, the laptop shouldn't be a barrier. Have the conversation, the outcomes of that conversation. You can write that down in, it's a tick in a box and writing 3 lines of text. It's setting a goal. It's not, you don't have to transcribe the whole content of that conversation onto our system. What we want to know is what are the important outtakes from that. And somebody was talking to us actually about, software that can record the conversations and transcribe it. And I'm like, in what world is there a place where people shouldn't be learning how to actively listen and understand, here are the 3 key things that have come out from that conversation. Let's agree them. Let's tell the business that's what they are, and let's move on from that. Like I'm not at the point, and maybe I'll eat my words because I have over many things in many years. Maybe we'll be doing it next year because there'll be a demand for it. But
Yeah.
I just think that key skill in life is to learn how to actively listen and engage in a conversation and understand what needs to happen as a result of it, not have a piece of technology doing that for you. So, this is all about helping people have a real human connection to somebody and show someone that you really care about them, like genuinely care about them and their career. And I saw something the other day. Will AI take over leadership? I mean, I hope not, because so much research gone into the need for human connection and interaction. And, post-COVID, I think we can see that I don't know, but I still get frustrated 4 years in if I have to go to a restaurant and do a QR code to get my menu. And
Same, yeah.
I don't want to do that. If I'm going somewhere, I want to sit there with my friends and maybe we'll look at the menu. Maybe you'll go, oh, what do you think that is? I don't want us to all be sitting there at our tables going, oh, what are you having? It doesn't, and I think it's the same for this. It's the prompt to have the conversation and then the discipline to record that conversation afterwards. That's what our technology should be doing, not taking away from it at all and thinking about it beforehand. If somebody comes up to you and says, how happy are you today, Liam? Or how are you? You'll probably just go, yeah, I'm fine, I'm good. But if I say to you, tell me on a scale of 1 to 10 how happy you are today, now you've got to think about it. And now I'm going to sit down with you and I'm going to ask you why. So if you're not a 10, very few people are, I'm going to ask you why not. And if you are a 10, I'm going to ask you exactly why you're a 10. And then I'm going to ask you to go and spread sunshine around my organisation because, you're a 10 happy. So we're doing something right with you. What does that look like? Either way, I'm going to find out more than if I just say, yeah, how are you today?
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. So I just really want to try and get this as clear as we can for the audience then. So can you give me like maybe like a roadmap or a list of things that are kind of done like through a comms app, and then which bits are done actually like sat face to face? So obviously like the prompt, like you said, like the prompt to have a meeting is done, for example,
So,
and then
So
what happens then?
You'd be prompted through, so let's say Yapster. So you'd be prompted through Yapster, you get a notification that says it's time for you to plan for your career conversation. Yeah. And that will be prompted in a number of different ways, depending on what's gone on before and how your business has decided to set up the technology. So you do that, and then you would click on it, you'd come into our system, and you would sit and you would answer a number of questions around your career. Then your manager would be notified that you've done this planning. They would get the opportunity to look at that, and then you're asked to arrange a face-to-face meeting. So you then have your meeting and you can get in. So you and your manager will have a notification on Yapster, or you can go straight into on the apps page, you can go straight into Korero, and you'll be asked to record the outcomes of that meeting on Korero, but you would have got to it through Yapster, if that makes sense.
Perfect. Awesome.
Does that make sense?
Got it. Okay. Awesome. That makes all complete sense to me. Is there anything that we need to cover off on the tech side and let people know about? Or do you think we've done it?
I think that's probably about it. It's it was very top line, isn't it? The only thing I would say is think really, really carefully about the technology you're putting in and what you're signing yourselves and all your people up to for the next however many years. It's a big decision, and also putting in a piece of tech isn't going to change a person's employee experience unless the managers in the business are really, really behind it. And it is a bit of a cultural shift. It's often a change in this is how we do things here. And people don't like change in general. There's a whole change curve, and, how people get through that is very different. And you have to be up for it and you have to be behind it, I think. So I think it's about, if you're going to do it properly, I would say. And
And
also I think I don't know why people in general, I don't expect to have conversations with every single person that I come across and them to suddenly buy our tech. I just don't. But I am also around to help. And so are most people that are supplying technology into the industry will have a much bigger understanding of it than operators, because that's our job, is to understand the landscape. Just ask people. I think I was at a conference, and I just remember somebody turning around and saying, suppliers is often seen as a bit of a dirty word, but actually we do know what we're talking about, and we can really help people sort of navigate it without necessarily trying to push an agenda. I'm not going to sell you our technology if it is not going to work in your business, because that's bad for me. Like, I don't want you coming back to me in 18 months ago and this doesn't work. And I'll be like, oh, yeah, I know it doesn't work because your leaders aren't strong enough and you haven't got a great tech stack in the first place. So no, you're not having it. Right. So, but what I can do is help and advise on, okay, here are the things you need to get in place for our stuff to be as successful as possible. And I'm pretty sure most suppliers, certainly the smaller businesses I know, have that same, we genuinely want to help. We're not doing this to try and screw it. Well, I'm not anyway, screw anyone over and just make loads of money. I mean, God, do not go into HR tech sales if that's what you want to do. So I think it's just about, understanding, being very clear on what your people strategy is and very clear on what your digital strategy is. Step back and think about it. Don't just go, that looks nice, I'll put that in. That looks nice, I'll put that in. Oh, suddenly, can we make those talk to each other?
Yeah.
Make sure that's going to happen when you're going through the sales process.
Yeah. I think it's worth mentioning as well to the listener that Joe, your details are always in the show notes here. So if anyone's got any questions about so if they're anywhere on this journey with a tech stack, and they want to reach out to you for some guidance, I guess even if they're thinking about Korero for a future date, it'd be useful for them to talk to you now, wouldn't it? Joe, thank you so much. That was enlightening as always. Amazing to spend time with you. Thank you so much for telling us about that.
And you?
We'll see you for the next one soon.